I watched the hallway for days. Every footstep, every squeaky cart, every knock that wasn't hers. 10 days in recovery, hip pinned, dignity threadbare, and still no sign of my daughter. Not a call, not a visit, not even a question. The nurse brought lilies. They were for someone else. The tech brought pills. No comfort in them. The silence did what the fall couldn't. It broke me open. So I stopped waiting. I picked up a pen. I made new plans. If she wouldn't show up for my healing, she wouldn't have a claim to my future. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me the story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The walls of room 208 were the color of old chamomile, meant to soothe, but mostly just faded. Lynette Harper lay on the narrow rehab bed, propped up by a triangle of firm pillows. Her left hip ached in pulses, wrapped beneath layers of gauze and stoicism. The fall had been fast. One slip on damp flagstone, and her world had shifted from soil and sun to sterile sheets and nurse rotations. She pressed her phone's screen again. The voicemail was still there, Clara's voice, clipped and cool. "We're swamped. Rest up. We'll come when we can." That was 6 days ago. Lynette didn't bother playing it again. Across the hallway, another door clicked open. Laughter echoed from inside. A man's voice, then a woman's, then the rustle of a gift bag. A nurse passed by with a vase of white lilies. "Miss DeMarco's daughter brought those," the nurse offered, catching Lynette's glance. "She's been in every day." Lynette nodded politely, her throat dry. No one had come through her door, not even once. A knock did come later, soft, tentative. Her heart lifted, then immediately fell as a tech entered with a blood pressure cuff and a distracted, "Hi, hun." After the vitals, Lynette reached for her notebook, a slim, leather-bound journal Joyce had given her years ago. She clicked the pen and wrote in neat block letters. Day 10. Door remains closed. Morphine dose halved. PT scheduled for tomorrow. Pain, 510. Loneliness, unscored. The phone buzzed beside her tray. A text. "Naomi. Thinking about you, Gran. Hope PT's going okay." Lynette stared at it longer than she should have. She typed "miss you" and deleted it. Typed again. "I'm proud of you." Deleted that too. Instead, she replied, "Doing fine. Heal fast, right?" And that was it. No follow-up. Just read. Then silence. Lynette leaned back, the sheets stiff against her back. She let her eyes scan the ceiling tiles. One was water-stained. Another flickered under the fluorescent light. Across from her, the TV played a muted home renovation show. Beautiful women in yoga pants ripped out kitchen cabinets while smiling husbands pretended to help. It all felt impossibly far away. When the nurse came in for evening meds, Lynette asked without lifting her gaze, "Do people ever recover without visitors?" The nurse blinked. "Well, sure. It's harder, but sure." Lynette nodded. That was all she needed. That night, she sat up with the lights off, the hallway glow cutting a sharp line across the foot of her bed. She listened to the building, the squeaky wheels of carts, the intercom beeps, the occasional groan or laugh through paper-thin walls, and she observed. The man next door who talked in his sleep about a dog named Rocco, the nurse who always stole an extra pudding cup from the cart, the woman 2 rooms down who screamed at her daughter over speakerphone, then sobbed afterward. Lynette didn't judge them. She just took notes. We all grieve differently. Some loudly, some in silence. Today I stopped waiting. Tomorrow I'll start watching. The next morning, she didn't check her phone. She didn't replay the voicemail. She didn't wonder what Clara was doing, or if Naomi might surprise her. Instead, she used her walker to make it to the window. Slowly, 10 steps. A small victory. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with heat. People came and went. Families carried balloons, tote bags, fast food. A girl in a college sweatshirt helped her grandmother into a car, tucking her seatbelt with the same care Lynette used to give Clara at that age. And then Lynette saw it, Across the lot, her own daughter's SUV, familiar plates, same dent above the rear wheel. Her heart thumped. Was Clara here? She stood straighter, suddenly alert, hands gripping the walker, but the car never moved. No one got out. After a minute, it backed out of the space and drove away. Lynette didn't cry. She didn't even curse. She just reached for her notebook, sat back down on the bed, and wrote, "I saw her car. She was close enough to touch the building, but not me," and underlined it twice. The next morning, the light through the window was sharper, less forgiving. Lynette's body ached from yesterday's Walker trek, but it was the kind of ache that hinted at progress. Her hand hovered over her phone for a long time before tapping the contacts list. She didn't scroll to Clara. That number would stay quiet. Instead, she found Joyce Banner. 2 rings. Then a familiar voice burst through like a pressure valve releasing. "Lynette Harper! What in hell happened to you?" Lynette let out a breath that surprised her. It almost sounded like relief. "I fell," she said simply. "Garden, slipped, hips pinned now." "I heard," Joyce snapped. "From who, you ask? The damn Meals on Wheels driver, if you can believe it. Not from you. And not from your daughter." There was a silence between them, thick, weighted, loyal. "I didn't want to bother you," Lynette said. Joyce snorted. "Sweetheart, I'm a retired nurse, not a Himalayan Sherpa. You don't need to scale Everest to call me. Where are you?" "Boise Ridge Rehab." Another pause. "I'll be there tomorrow morning. You want coffee or dignity first?" Lynette smiled. "Both. Surprise me." Joyce arrived the next day just after breakfast. No makeup, windbreaker zipped, holding a thermos and a heavy leather folder. Her eyes scanned Lynette from head to toe like a triage nurse. Then she exhaled and set both items on the side table. "I brought forms and cinnamon blend. We're handling both." Lynette blinked. "Forms?" Joyce pulled up a chair with the same ease she once used for bedside charts. "You're not leaving recovery decisions to that girl of yours, are you? Clara?" Lynette looked toward the window, then shook her head. "No." "Good. Because I've seen too many women your age end up stuck, shunted from rehab to assisted living with nobody asking them what they want." She flipped open the folder. Medical checklists, Medicare info, home care agency reviews, elder legal pamphlets. It was a war chest. Lynette took a slow sip from the thermos. The coffee was bitter and perfect. "You came prepared." "I came angry," Joyce corrected. "But that's just fuel." They worked for over an hour, Joyce going through her independence packet like a drill sergeant with a heart. In-home care providers, insurance riders, rentable medical equipment, PT routines Lynette could do with a towel and a chair. "No offense," Joyce said, tapping a page with her pen, "but if you wait for Clara to step up, you'll die in a hallway while she finishes a conference call." Lynette gave a soft laugh, then whispered, "I think I needed to hear that." Joyce paused, softened. "Look, I've been invisible too. You give your best years to people, and one day they just move on. But that doesn't mean you're done. It means you pivot." Lynette closed her eyes for a moment. It felt like her body, still mending, was trying to meet her mind halfway. She nodded. "Okay, so what's step 1? Joyce sat back, satisfied. "We build your own recovery plan. No family guilt, no emotional IOUs, just facts, options, and a few people who show up when they say they will." Lynette reached for her journal. Today's entry flowed differently, not as a wound, but as a contract with herself. September 21st, Joyce brought truth and thermos. Step 1, own my outcome. Start again, alone if needed. She underlined the last sentence. As the nurse came in to adjust her compression socks, Lynette noticed the clipboard at the end of the bed. The discharge paperwork hadn't been touched. No signatures, no plan. But that would change. That night, she didn't cry when she turned out the lights. She didn't check the phone. She didn't wonder where Clara was. She just slept, like a woman with a blueprint. The man who stepped into room 208 looked more like a librarian than a lawyer. No briefcase, no fanfare, just a navy cardigan, wire-rimmed glasses, and a padded messenger bag slung across his chest. He paused politely inside the doorway, glancing once toward the nurse's station before walking in. "Ms. Harper," he said, voice low, but sure. Lynette sat upright in bed, her robe tied neatly, the thermos from Joyce still warm in her hands. "You must be Mr. Kent." "Eli, please." He offered a small, practiced smile. "I figured discretion might be appreciated." She nodded. "More than you know." He pulled a chair from the corner and sat down without the usual social filler. From his bag, he retrieved a worn leather folio, and from it, a copy of her existing estate binder. Tabs labeled in Clara's tidy handwriting. "I reviewed everything last night," he said. "Power of attorney, healthcare directive, estate titles. As of now, your daughter has full legal control should anything happen." Lynette didn't flinch. "And can that be undone?" Eli looked up, holding her gaze. "Yes. Today, if you're ready." "I am." There was no tremor in her voice, no hesitation. Just that steady resolve that had been growing since the voicemail, since the lilies meant for someone else's room, since the SUV that had pulled away without a knock. Eli opened a new folder. Fresh documents, clean margins. "This packet revokes the durable power of attorney, the health proxy, and replaces both with new designations. You'll initial here and here." He handed her a pen. Lynette took it. "I'd like Joyce Banner named on all of it," she said. "Medical decisions, legal authority, everything Clara used to hold." Eli didn't blink. "I've already drafted it that way." "Good." A silence settled between them as she began to sign. The pen scratched across paper like a declaration. With each stroke, something unhooked itself inside her. A weight shifting, a boundary resetting. When she reached the final page, she paused. "Will Clara be notified?" Eli shook his head. "Not until you choose to disclose. These changes don't require her consent. And legally, she has no standing to object unless your capacity is in question, which I will document otherwise." "Please do," Lynette said. "And include that she hasn't visited once." He nodded again, pulling a notary stamp from his bag. The click and seal echoed louder than expected in the quiet room. Final. Real. A rehab tech peeked in briefly, then disappeared again, uninterested. Lynette reached for her journal once more. This time, she didn't write a narrative. She made a list. Clara, revoked. Joyce, trusted outcome, mine. When she looked up, Eli was organizing duplicates into a sealed envelope. "I'll file the originals this afternoon. Copies will be delivered to your medical provider, your bank, and your primary care doctor. Would you like one kept on site here?" "Please." "And one at home?" She hesitated. "Joyce will hold it." He nodded once more, then stood. "You've taken control today, Ms. Harper. Most people wait too long. You didn't." "I waited 10 days, she said flatly. "That was long enough." He started toward the door, but turned back. "You don't need to explain this to anyone. You've documented everything. You're lucid, competent, and protected." "Noted." And with that, he left. No handshake, no ceremony. Just closure, wrapped in carbon copy. Lynette sat back. Legs elevated, the binder now replaced with a new one. Blue instead of burgundy. Joyce would like that. Clean slate color. She closed her eyes and breathed. It wasn't anger she felt. It was sovereignty. The text from Clara stayed unread. Lynette saw the notification. The preview banner hovered just long enough to show the edge of a question mark, then disappeared. She didn't tap it. Didn't swipe it away either. Let it sit. Let it wait. Her phone rested face down on the bedside table by the time Joyce arrived that afternoon, breathless, pink-cheeked, and dragging a collapsible walker behind her. "Look what I liberated from my garage," she said, wheeling it toward the bed. "It still works, unlike my ex-husband." Lynette smirked. "And here I thought I was your main charity project. Please, Joyce huffed. You're a damn blueprint. They spent the next 30 minutes going over basics: posture, gait, energy management. Joyce coached like she'd done it for decades, which she had, but made it feel like a shared mission, not a pity project. Belly tight, weight centered, she said. You want to glide like you own the floor, not beg it to hold you. By her third lap around the room, Lynette's joints burned, but her posture had lifted. Sweat gathered along her hairline, but she didn't complain. Take a look, Joyce said, nodding toward the window reflection. That's not a woman in recovery. That's a woman in charge. Lynette followed her gaze. The reflection was imperfect, dulled by double-paned glass. But still, there she was, standing straighter, walker in hand, eyes sharp. I forgot what I looked like upright, she murmured. Joyce handed her a paper towel. Get used to it. Later that day, as the sun shifted across the far wall, a young nurse named Kendra stepped in with a fresh ice pack. You're improving faster than most, she said, adjusting the pack beneath Lynette's hip. You'll probably meet discharge criteria ahead of schedule. Lynette raised a brow. Then what? Well, normally your family would coordinate the transition. Home prep, follow-ups, aftercare. I'll be coordinating that myself. Kendra hesitated. Oh, okay, that's good. Independence always good. But Lynette could tell she wasn't used to patients saying that with such clarity. Once Kendra left, Lynette reached for her phone, not to respond to Clara, but to open a contact. Eli Kent, elder law. She texted him a single line. When you're free, I want to discuss property title options. The reply came fast, like he'd been waiting. Can call in 10. Paperwork prep already in motion. She leaned back and stared at the ceiling, counting each tile like a meditation. She had spent her entire adult life inside that house. Her late husband's paint on the garage trim, Clara's height chart still penciled inside the pantry. But none of those memories had walked through this rehab door. And memories don't lift a woman into a shower chair. She was ready to let go. By the time Eli called, she was dressed and seated in the vinyl chair by the window, a small breeze creeping in through the cracked pane. He walked her through the initial steps, reviewing title history, checking for any liens, prepping for trust transfers. She told him to proceed. And Eli, she added at the end of the call, no family notifications. Not yet. Understood. She hung up, then opened her journal again. But this time, flipped to a blank page near the back. Not a log. A letter. Dear Naomi, one day, you'll ask why I did this. I hope you'll already know. The pen hovered. It wasn't spite. It was survival, and survival sometimes looks like a locked door with your name no longer on it. She folded the page when it felt complete, tucked it into the back flap of the journal, then started a second letter, this one for herself, a reminder that clarity wasn't cruelty. It was a gift she should have given herself sooner. The discharge coordinator's clipboard hovered like a threat. Normally, we loop in the primary emergency contact for this stage, she said, tapping her pen on the dotted line next to next of kin. Your daughter, Clara, is still listed here. Lynette didn't hesitate. Remove her. The coordinator blinked, taken aback. Do you have someone else? Lynette nodded toward the visitor chair, where Joyce sat with a folded newspaper and the patience of someone who'd already survived worse than bureaucracy. That's Joyce Banner. She'll be managing all discharge and home care coordination. Joyce gave a tiny wave, then opened her purse and handed over a copy of the updated health proxy. It was clean, notarized, and already indexed with a fluorescent pink tab. The woman behind the clipboard skimmed it, her brows rising slightly. All right then. Just like that, Clara's name was crossed out. Officially. Later that day, Joyce helped Lynette fill out the intake paperwork for Boise Valley In-Home Services. It was a modest agency, not the luxury kind Clara would have approved of. But it was professional, licensed, and more importantly, Joyce had used them before. Trusted them. The coordinator on the other end of the phone asked the usual questions: preferred visit schedule, insurance provider, medication list. Lynette answered everyone calmly. Yes, I have a supplemental plan. No, I won't need family assistance. Tuesday and Friday check-ins will be enough for now. She signed the forms with steady hands. The in-home care costs would be routed through her own insurance account. Clara wouldn't see a cent of it. When the call ended, Joyce let out a long breath and handed over a mug of lukewarm tea. That's it, she said. You've done it. She shut out Lynette. Fully, you did that. Lynette didn't smile. Not yet. But she sat a little taller in the bed, the weight of decision already beginning to reshape her posture. The call came in that evening. The rehab receptionist knocked once, then poked her head in with an awkward smile. Your daughter, Clara, just phoned. She's confused about your discharge status, says no one's returning her emails. Lynette turned a page in her journal. She's not listed, she said, without looking up. There's nothing to return, the receptionist paused. Would you like me to take a message? No, thank you. She went back to writing. The receptionist lingered for a second longer, then nodded and quietly stepped out. Joyce, seated across the room, raised an eyebrow. She's rattled. Good, Lynette said. She should be. Outside, dusk crept in with the calm cruelty of early fall. Soft pinks and golds bleeding across the sky, mocking the cold edge beneath. Joyce got up to adjust the blinds, but paused as Lynette's phone vibrated again. A new message from Naomi. Mom's upset. Did something happen? Lynette stared at the words, not angry, not accusatory, just confused. She didn't respond. Not yet. Naomi deserved better than a reactive reply. She deserved context, not caught in the crossfire drama. And Lynette had learned, finally, that clarity took time. Across the room, Joyce's phone buzzed too. She checked it and muttered under her breath. That woman's throwing a full tantrum in my voicemail. Says I inserted myself. Lynette snorted. She's not wrong. You did. Joyce grinned. And I'd do it again. The next morning, Eli texted. Filed affidavit confirming capacity. You're fully protected. No legal footholds left. Lynette read it twice, then deleted the thread. No evidence needed. No trail to explain. She opened her journal again, flipped to a fresh page, and wrote, Clara, outside the walls, Naomi. Still at the door, I will not open it out of guilt. She folded the page, pressed it flat, and tucked it behind Naomi's letter. The weight of both pages, past and future, steadied her hand. Lynette heard the heels before she saw the face. Fast, clipped footsteps down the rehab hallway. Impatient. Entitled. Like someone late to their own wedding. She was halfway through a journaling line when Clara appeared in the doorway, breath uneven and phone still clutched in her hand like a weapon. Why is your neighbor listed as your medical proxy? No hello, no flowers, no concern. Just the demand. Lynette didn't move. She placed her pen down gently and folded the journal closed. Because, she said evenly, Joyce showed up. Clara blinked, thrown. You didn't even tell me you were making these kinds of changes. You didn't ask if I needed anything. I was giving you space. No, Lynette said. You were giving yourself convenience. Clara's eyes flared. She stepped into the room, lowering her voice just enough for the nurses not to hear, but still sharp with judgment. This isn't how families work, Mom. Lynette nodded slowly. Exactly. This is how I work now. For a second, Clara looked almost childlike. The bravado slipped. A brief flicker of panic behind her eyes, like she'd walked through the wrong door and couldn't find her way out. I am your family. And I was yours, Lynette said quietly, until that didn't matter anymore. Clara's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She stood there, flawless hair, pressed coat, $1,000 purse. The image of control, but it was cracked. You're not thinking clearly, she said finally. You're mad. You're hurt. But locking me out legally? That's dangerous behavior, Mom. No, Lynette said, her voice steady as glass. It's documented behavior, witnessed, notarized, and fully protected. Clara took a step back. So that's it? You've just replaced me with the lady next door? Lynette's jaw tightened. Don't you dare reduce Joyce to that. She didn't replace you. She stood where you wouldn't. The silence that followed was cold enough to chill the room. Without another word, Clara turned on her heel and walked out. No hug, no apology, no second look. Only retreat. 2 hours later, an email pinged into Lynette's inbox. Subject line, important family concerns. She didn't open it right away. She recognized the sender, Todd Young, managing partner, Conflict Solutions Northwest Clara's husband, her absentee son-in-law, the peacemaker who never got involved until the money had signatures attached. When she finally opened it, it was exactly what she expected. Dear Lynette, Clara mentioned there's been some confusion around your medical planning and recent estate activity. I wanted to reach out as a neutral third party and offer to help facilitate a clearer path forward. It's important for everyone to feel heard. Let's schedule a time to talk through this as a family, privately and calmly. Best, Todd. She read it once, then again, then hit delete. Neutral third party, like this was some kind of mediation, like her independence was a misunderstanding to be negotiated. The next morning, Lynette sat with Eli in the corner of the rehab facility's family room, a neutral zone where uncomfortable truths could be filed like taxes. He slid a new set of papers across the table. This is a formal disinheritance notice, he said. You're not required to file it yet, but it protects your intent from legal contestation later. Lynette nodded, barely looking at it. I want it drafted now, she said. She'll see it soon enough. Eli gave a small nod. I'll hold until you're ready to sign. It's a final step. Just say the word. She folded the document and slid it into her notebook between her own letter and Naomi's. Layers of her life, one sealed, one open, one undecided. The manila folders started as a joke. Joyce brought them in with a smirk and a tote bag full of multicolored tabs. If we're going to make this official, she said, we might as well do it alphabetically. Lynette rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. The folders were cheap, pre-labeled, insurance, legal, contacts, health, with space to add more as needed. And soon, they did. Every voicemail Clara hadn't returned, logged. Every nurse who mentioned Lynette's room had gone visitless, noted. Every interaction, from the Meals on Wheels driver's concern to the first PT walk with Joyce at her side, dated and described. I feel ridiculous, Lynette said at first. Joyce, flipping through the binder rings with the ease of an old war medic, didn't look up. You feel prepared, she said. There's a difference. Eli visited the rehab facility again on a gray Thursday, 1 week before Lynette's scheduled discharge. They met in the private conference room off the administrative wing, which still smelled faintly of old carpet cleaner and microwave oatmeal. He laid the files across the table and opened Lynette's binder, now bulked up with printouts, hospital notes, and notarized copies of every signed change. I'll be honest with you, Eli said, adjusting his glasses. This is one of the most documented estrangement cases I've seen. Lynette looked down at the neat rows of time-stamped pages. Her own words, captured as evidence. Not angry, not emotional, just factual. She'll say I was confused, she said. She'll try, Eli replied, and she'll fail. Joyce was leaning in the doorway with her usual no-nonsense glare. Let her try, she muttered. She doesn't know who she left behind. Lynette closed the binder and smoothed her hand over the cover. Make 3 copies, she said. That night, Lynette got a call from a high school friend in Kansas, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Thought I'd check on you, the friend said hesitantly. I saw something Clara posted. Just wanted to hear from you directly. Lynette froze. After they hung up, she opened Facebook for the first time in months. There it was, a public post from Clara's page, under a filtered photo of her and Naomi at brunch. Sad when people get old and paranoid. We try, but sometimes they push away the people who love them most. 3 crying face emojis, dozens of comments, fake concern masquerading as community. Lynette didn't respond. Instead, she took a screenshot. Joyce texted within minutes. Saw it. Trash. Saved it too. The next morning, Lynette printed the post on office paper, highlighted Clara's name, and filed it under miscellaneous or defense. She didn't need sympathy. She needed receipts. Then she sat down at her small writing desk by the rehab window, cleared now of pills and gauze, and opened her estate letter. The original version had been bitter, defensive, a list of who failed and why. She deleted the whole thing and wrote this instead. This wasn't abandonment. It was clarity. I didn't remove anyone out of spite. I removed confusion. I removed neglect. I removed the silence that came when I needed care and got excuses instead. The people listed in these documents are the ones who showed up, the ones who stayed. That's not revenge. That's respect. She signed it, dated it, and handed it to Eli during his next visit. He filed it into the master record without a word, but not without a nod. That evening, Lynette sat outside in the facility's small courtyard, the September air crisp with finality. She didn't need to look at her phone. It had stopped buzzing. The silence, once a wound, now sounded like peace. She heard the shuffle of soft-soled sneakers before the knock. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just hesitant. Joyce glanced up from the kitchen island where she was sorting medication trays. You expecting anyone? Lynette shook her head. Her heart had already leapt once that week, when the wind jostled the porch swing. She wasn't in the business of expecting any more. Joyce opened the front door, then stepped aside. Naomi stood there with her backpack hugged tight to her chest. Her eyes scanned the room behind Joyce, like she was waiting for someone to tell her this was a mistake. She looked smaller than Lynette remembered, softer in the face, older in the posture. Hi, Gran. Lynette's voice didn't come right away. It didn't need to. Joyce turned to Lynette. You want me to? No, Lynette said. Let her in. Naomi sat on the couch like it belonged to someone else. Shoulders tight, ankles crossed. That same backpack clutched in her lap like armor. For a long stretch, neither of them spoke. The TV was off. The air purifier hummed. The only sound was the muted clink of Joyce organizing pill bottles in the kitchen with deliberate nonchalance. Finally, Naomi broke the silence. Mom said you're turning on us. Lynette studied her carefully. Do I look like I'm turning? Naomi blinked, eyes glancing toward the walker parked beside the recliner. No, I'm not turning, Lynette said. I'm recovering, alone. Naomi looked down. Her voice cracked when she asked, Why didn't you tell me it got this bad? Because you would have believed her version of it, Lynette said. And I didn't want to make you choose. Naomi wiped under her eye with the edge of her sleeve. She said you shut her out completely, that you hired a lawyer behind her back, that you gave everything away. I didn't give anything away, Lynette replied. I reclaimed what was already mine. Naomi was quiet for a while. Lynette watched her granddaughter's fingers tighten around the strap of the backpack. Her shoulders shook just barely. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to break the silence. I didn't know it was this bad. Lynette's tone softened, the edges of her voice rounding out. I know you didn't. I thought she was just busy. You know, work, travel, stuff with Dad. I thought you were fine. I wasn't. But I will be. Naomi looked up, mascara starting to smudge beneath one eye. And me? Am I shut out too? Lynette leaned forward slowly, one hand resting on the edge of the coffee table. You were never shut out. You just weren't paying attention. Naomi exhaled, part gasp, part sob, and then her voice fell into a whisper. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lynette didn't answer right away. She looked at Naomi's face, open now, unguarded in a way that neither of her parents had managed in years. And for the first time in months, Lynette allowed herself to hope. I don't want anything from you, she said. I want something with you. Naomi nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. Joyce, sensing the shift in temperature, quietly left the room and closed the kitchen door behind her. Naomi pulled something from her backpack, a tiny leather sketchbook, creased and worn. She opened it to a page with a drawing of Lynette's backyard garden, the tomato stakes, the yellow gloves, the bent trellis from last summer's windstorm. "I drew this the week after you fell," Naomi said. "I didn't know how bad it was, but I couldn't stop thinking about that patch of sun near the fence. It was always warm there." Lynette took the sketchbook carefully, fingers tracing the edge of the drawing like a memory. "I used to sit there after I watered," she said. "The sun hit at just the right angle." "I remember," Naomi's voice cracked again. The living trust documents arrived in a thick, weighted envelope. Not emailed, not shared via some digital link. Printed, bound, delivered by hand. Eli knew better than to risk something this intimate to a PDF. He sat with Lynette at the dining table in her small Boise bungalow, the old oak surface cleared of its usual stack of seed catalogs and clipped recipes. A vase of sunflowers sat in the center. Naomi had brought them. Joyce hovered near the back wall, arms crossed but relaxed. Her presence was its own kind of security system. Eli flipped open the top page. "Name of trust," he said, tapping the heading, "The Harper Legacy Trust. You're the settlor and sole trustee while alive. Upon death or incapacity, your designated successor takes over." Lynette adjusted her reading glasses and scanned the lines. "And Clara's name?" "Nowhere in it," Eli said. Completely removed. Lynette didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped, as if a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying had just been lifted. Naomi sat beside her, quiet and still, watching every motion, every page turn. "And Naomi?" Lynette asked without looking up. Eli slid another sheet forward. "She's listed as contingent beneficiary. The trust pays out in stages, beginning at age 25. Educational expenses covered earlier if needed. Joyce is the gatekeeper." "Successor trustee," Joyce clarified with a wink. "But gatekeeper sounds cooler." Naomi blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to—" "I know," Lynette interrupted gently, "but I wanted to. It's not about the money, it's about intention." Naomi lowered her gaze, and something like shame flickered behind her eyes. But Lynette wasn't interested in guilt. That was Clara's currency. This was about something else, something earned. The next item was the house. Eli turned to a tab marked "Real Property" and passed over the notarized deed. "The home is now held in trust. That protects it from probate and any contesting parties. Future sale or transfer can only be approved by you, or by Joyce, if you're ever unable." Joyce whistled low under her breath. "If Clara ever gets a whiff of that, she'll crack her veneers, grinding her teeth." "Let her crack them," Lynette said. "She'll have to pay her own dentist." Eli chuckled, but only briefly. He flipped to the next page. "We've also placed your certificates of deposit and your IRA into the trust. Beneficiaries are all updated. Again, no mention of Clara, no fallback clause." "And health directives?" Lynette asked, her voice sharpening. "Already updated and distributed to all medical providers," Eli confirmed. "You've designated Joyce as your sole agent. And per your request, visitation rights during hospitalization are restricted. Clara will not be notified or permitted entry." Naomi's eyebrows lifted. She glanced at her grandmother. "Can you really do that?" Lynette didn't take her eyes off Eli. "We can, and we did." Naomi didn't press. She just nodded slowly, as if finally beginning to understand what real boundaries look like. The final document Eli slid forward was thinner than the others. It wasn't legal. Not really, but it mattered. "Obituary language," he said. "It's something I recommend clients do when estate relationships are complicated. We keep it in the trust file. That way, no one can hijack your legacy or rewrite your story." Lynette read the short draft. It mentioned her late husband, her years teaching elementary school, her volunteer work at the library. It did not mention Clara. It did mention Naomi. And Joyce. She tapped the paragraph with one finger. Add the name of the home care nonprofit, the one Joyce recommended. They get a donation in my memory. Eli made a note without a word. After he left, Lynette stood slowly and looked around the room, not for clutter, not for safety hazards. She was looking at her space as if seeing it for the first time in decades. Not a place she lived in, a place she owned. Alone. She turned to Naomi, who was still sitting on the couch. "If anything happens, you'll be okay," she said. "I've made sure of it." Naomi nodded. "And what if nothing happens? What if you just live?" Lynette smiled softly. "Then I'll keep the tomatoes going." The manila envelope from Eli arrived on a Tuesday morning, hand-delivered and stamped with confidential in bold red ink. Inside, a neat, merciless compilation. Every signature, every witness, every notary seal. Each timestamp aligned with corresponding medical evaluations. A full record of Lynette's mental capacity, mobility notes, even therapist acknowledgments. Joyce placed the documents on the kitchen table like blueprints to a fortress. She tried to call Eli directly, she said, stirring sugar into her tea. He didn't pick up. By legal design. Lynette flipped through the stack slowly. It was all there, crisp, airtight, not a comma out of place. "She gambled you'd stay weak," Joyce muttered. "She never expected you to get sharp." Lynette didn't answer. She didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than any phone call. By afternoon, Lynette was back at her laptop, small, dusty, but functional. She logged into the hospital network and updated her emergency contacts. Clara's name, deleted. Joyce Banner, primary contact. Naomi Young, secondary, with visitation clearance noted. A private password was added to every file. Then the bank, then the utility company, then her voter registration. She moved with deliberate care, slower than she once had, but sharper now, like a surgeon or a general. When the DMV site asked for a secondary mailing address, she typed Joyce's without flinching. "Do you want me to call them about your new ID?" Joyce offered from the couch. "No," Lynette said. "I want to finish it myself." A pause. Then, "You're good at this, you know." "I wasn't always," Lynette replied, eyes still on the screen. "But I am now." That evening, Naomi sent a text. Told her to drop it. She won't. She says this isn't legal. Says you've been manipulated. Lynette stared at the screen and slowly typed back. "I wasn't manipulated. I was ignored." And then I responded. Naomi responded with only one word. Understood. Lynette sat back in her chair and let out a long, tired breath. She hadn't cried in weeks. She didn't intend to start now. Later that night, Joyce found her in the living room, slowly labeling a fresh folder. Final backups. "You know," Joyce said softly, "she might never forgive you." Lynette didn't look up. "She didn't earn my forgiveness. Why would I need hers?" Joyce nodded, quiet for a beat. "I just mean, it's hard. Having a daughter who sees you as a threat instead of a person." Lynette finally looked up. "She only sees threats when she doesn't hold the leash," Joyce exhaled. "Fair." They sat in silence while the evening news murmured in the background, unnoticed. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the porch swing against the siding. Inside, Lynette's fingers moved slowly over the folder edges. This wasn't paranoia, it was clarity. She finished the last of the paperwork just after 10. Stamped, sealed, filed. Then she reached for her phone. Not to check texts, not to scroll Facebook, not to reread Clara's tantrums. She opened her camera, took a photo of the dining table, each document laid out with precision, took another of her hand, resting on the title page of the trust, and one more, a quiet, wide shot of her living room, fireplace, journal on the end table. Naomi's sketchbook open on the coffee table. Flipped to the garden, she uploaded them all to a private cloud folder labeled Legacy Locked. The woman from Adult Protective Services showed up on a Friday morning wearing a navy pantsuit, a neutral smile, and a badge clipped to her lapel. "Ms. Harper," she asked politely at the door. Lynette had just finished steeping her tea. "You must be from Elder Services." "Yes, ma'am. Karen Dobbs." She extended her hand. "We received an anonymous report of potential undue influence regarding recent medical and financial decisions." Lynette nodded as she stepped aside. "I assume anonymous means my daughter." The caseworker offered a carefully blank expression. "I'm not permitted to confirm that." "Of course you're not," Lynette said, gesturing to the dining room table. "Come on in. Let's not pretend we're surprised." Karen took her seat across from Lynette, who was already reaching for the navy binder. Joyce stood in the background, arms folded but silent, presence without pressure. "I'll answer whatever you need," Lynette said, "but I'll let my paperwork speak first." Karen raised an eyebrow. "That's usually the hardest part to get." Lynette opened the binder and began turning pages. First, durable power of attorney, updated, notarized, witnessed. Second, healthcare proxy, signed, logged with 3 providers. Third, physician's capacity certification from her post-op assessment. Fourth, copies of every legal filing, including the trust and will. Karen skimmed, slowed, began taking quiet notes. "These are very thorough." "I'm a teacher by trade," Lynette said. "Lesson plans, rosters, liability forms. I've been building paper trails since the 80s. A faint smile from Karen. "You're certainly more organized than most people I visit." Joyce snorted softly. "She's more organized than I am. And I was a damn nurse." Karen paused on a page with a time-stamped email from Eli's office, confirming the completion of the disinheritance draft. "You have legal counsel?" "Yes." "And you're aware that your daughter has contacted the office?" Lynette nodded. "She's been told legally and clearly that I'm competent, and that no changes will be reversed. Any further attempts will be ignored." Karen clicked her pen shut. "Well, Miss Harper," she said slowly, "from what I see, you're not only competent, you're meticulous." "Is that your official conclusion?" Lynette asked, not unkindly. "It is," Karen replied. "There's no evidence of coercion, no financial exploitation, and no red flags. If anything, I'd call this an exemplary case of late-life independence." She stood and extended her hand again. "I'll file a no findings report today. No follow-up needed unless you request it." Lynette shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for your time." Karen looked at Joyce on her way out. "Keep supporting her." "Oh, I intend to." Later that afternoon, Eli texted from his office. Clara emailed twice, one emotional, one hostile. Per agreement, no response will be given. Silence is the answer. Lynette read the message and forwarded it to Naomi, who was due to visit that evening. Within minutes, Naomi replied, "She's spinning out. Told me the whole world is turning against her." I said, "No." Gran just turned toward herself. Lynette smiled, brief but full, and turned to her journal. September 27th. Visited by a woman in a badge, left with nothing but admiration. She's locked out by design, not accident. She closed the notebook and placed it back beside the photo frame Naomi had brought last week. An old picture of the 2 of them in the garden, laughing. Clara hadn't taken the photo. It had been Joyce. A better angle, a better memory. Naomi showed up just after dusk with 2 coffees and a box of donuts she swore were for research. They sat on the back porch, wrapped in light sweaters, watching the last light of September bleed out across the yard. She asked if I was planning to pick sides, Naomi said after a long sip of coffee. Lynette glanced at her. "What did you say?" "I said I wasn't picking. I was seeing." Lynette nodded, her eyes wet but steady. "Good answer." Naomi pulled out her sketch pad. "Think I could stay overnight this weekend. Maybe help with the garden." Lynette didn't answer right away. She looked out at the fence, the weeds creeping through the lower boards, the tomato stakes leaning in like old friends. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think it's time we got some hands in the dirt again." The hospital lobby was brighter than she remembered. All sterile whites and soft jazz looping through hidden speakers. An autumn wreath hung over the check-in desk, a forced cheerfulness clashing against the scent of antiseptic and overripe hand sanitizer. Lynette leaned slightly on her cane as she stepped up to the receptionist. "I have a record update request," she said. The young woman behind the counter blinked. "For yourself?" Lynette nodded. "Yes. I'd like to speak with someone from medical records." Joyce stood just behind her, arms folded, purse heavy with backup copies. Within minutes, a woman in pale blue scrubs appeared, leading them down a hallway to a private office that smelled faintly of copier ink and old printer paper. The clerk gestured to a seat. "What can I help you with today, Ms. Harper?" Lynette sat slowly, adjusting her coat. "I need to flag my file," she said. "There's a name I want removed, and one I want reinforced." The woman opened her screen. "All right. Who are we removing?" "Clara Harper Young," Lynette said, clear and steady. "My daughter." A flicker of hesitation in the clerk's expression, then fingers tapping keys. "And the reason for removal?" "She is no longer a part of my emergency care plan. No contact, no access, no notification under any condition." The woman nodded slowly, then turned the monitor so Lynette could review. "Would you like to add a password to your records? That ensures no one accesses or modifies anything without your consent." "Yes." Set the passphrase as Legacy 1, lowercase, one word. Joyce chuckled under her breath. "Subtle." "Strong," Lynette corrected. "And who are we adding as primary?" "Joyce Banner. Full medical authority in all emergencies. Secondary, Naomi Young. Permission to be informed, not to decide." The clerk updated the file, then turned the screen back. "It's all locked in. And per our system, Clara won't be alerted she's been removed." Lynette nodded. "That's fine. She'll figure it out eventually. But not through me." The woman leaned back, clearly impressed. "I don't get many people ahead of the paperwork." "I taught 4th grade for 28 years, Lynette said dryly. "No one knows how to plan for a fire drill like I do." They left the hospital 15 minutes later. No drama, no paperwork missed, no hallway tears. Just a door, officially, finally, closed. That evening, Naomi came by again with a bag of groceries and her laptop. "I downloaded some garden planning software," she said. "We can design your beds for spring." Joyce made herself scarce, disappearing to the sunroom with a crossword and her portable speaker humming Fleetwood Mac. Naomi unpacked pasta, basil, and a bar of dark chocolate. "For stamina," she claimed, then sat across from her grandmother at the kitchen table. "You look lighter," she said after a while. Lynette poured them both tea. "I feel lighter." Naomi hesitated, then reached for a worn envelope. "She called me. Again. Left a voicemail." Lynette didn't ask what it said. She didn't want it contaminating the quiet. Naomi continued anyway. "She said she can't believe you'd shut her out of your life like this." Lynette took a slow sip, then said, "She never realized I was already out of hers." Naomi looked down at her cup. "She'll never understand this. I know. She'll tell people you were cruel, vindictive." Lynette nodded. "And I'll let her, because I didn't do this for her to understand." She looked directly at Naomi. "I did this for me to live." Outside, the porch light flicked on automatically as the sky turned lavender. Joyce popped her head in. "You want me to start dinner?" "In a bit," Lynette said. "We're just finishing up here." Naomi glanced at the sketchbook beside her. "Think I could sketch the front yard tomorrow?" "Only if you help me cut back the roses afterward." Naomi smiled. "Deal." The fireproof safe arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Gray, compact, heavier than it looked. Joyce signed for it at the front door and wheeled it inside with a grunt. "You sure you don't want me to bolt it to the floor?" she teased. "No need," Lynette said, sorting a stack of labeled envelopes on the kitchen table. "If someone breaks in to steal my living will, they're in for a very dull crime spree." Joyce opened the safe door and stepped back. "Ready when you are." Lynette picked up the binder. It was thicker now, not cluttered, but complete. Final will, signed. Revised trust, executed. Healthcare proxy, reinforced. Legacy letter, rewritten with clear eyes and a steady hand. No loopholes. No gray areas. No just-in-case mentions of Clara. She placed the binder into the fireproof cradle like laying a book to rest on a shelf. Not goodbye, just protected. Copies are already at Eli's, Joyce said as she shut the door. Triple-checked and time-stamped. Lynette turned the dial, spun the code, and heard the satisfying click of finality. That evening, Naomi returned with her hair pulled back and dirt under her fingernails. "The roses fought me," she said, wiping sweat from her brow, "but I won." Lynette nodded toward the fridge. "You earned the lemonade." They sat on the back porch again, the September sun lower now, slanting gold light across the pavers. The scent of fresh-cut lavender drifted from a ceramic pot Naomi had placed near the garden's edge. "Eli called earlier," Lynette said. Naomi looked over. "Everything okay?" "It is now." Naomi waited, giving her space. "I added a clause to the trust," Lynette said. "A portion of the estate will go to the Boise Valley Home Care Network. They were there when she wasn't. That matters." Naomi nodded. "It does." "And you and Joyce," Lynette continued, "you're listed as what Eli calls legacy protectors. You won't just inherit, you'll defend. If anything ever comes up, you'll have the power to speak for me." Naomi's mouth parted, but she didn't speak right away. "You trust me that much?" she finally asked. Lynette didn't hesitate. "You earned it, with truth, not obligation." Naomi looked away, blinking faster than usual. Inside, the final obituary draft sat on the printer tray. It was short, clean. True, Lynette Harper, 72, beloved teacher, gardener, and fiercely independent woman, passed away peacefully at her Boise home. She is survived by her granddaughter, Naomi Young, and her dear friend Joyce Banner. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Boise Valley Home Care Network. No mention of Clara, not even a footnote. Lynette read it once, smiled, and slid it into a folder marked Post, upon event. She placed it beside the funeral request letter, where she'd outlined the exact hymns she wanted. No Amazing Grace. The photos she preferred, Naomi's sketches, not old family portraits, and the color of her casket lining, blue, not white. Every choice intentional, every absence earned. Just before dusk, Lynette made her way out to the garden. She took her time, cane steady on the gravel path. No one rushed her anymore. She sat in the Adirondack chair Joyce had painted pale green back in July. The breeze tugged at the corners of her shawl. Naomi was inside making tea. Joyce hummed softly in the kitchen, something that sounded like landslide. And Lynette? She simply sat. The garden had come back to life. Tomatoes swelling, lavender blooming, even the battered trellis had been patched up, the vine curling upward like it still believed in the sun. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded note card. "Naomi, one day, all of this will be yours, not just the garden, the peace that grew from it." She placed it in the side pocket of her journal and leaned back. Not tired, not waiting, just whole. The envelope was pale blue, tucked under Lynette's teacup on the kitchen table, clearly placed there after she'd gone out to deadhead the marigolds. She hadn't seen Naomi come or go. She unfolded it with the same care she used when opening seed packets. Gentle fingers, slow breath. Inside was a drawing, watercolor and pencil, loose strokes and soft shadows. It showed Lynette from behind, seated in her garden chair, shawl draped, cane resting by her side. Her silhouette was surrounded by blooming vines, tomato stakes, and lavender stalks, leaning like they'd grown just to hear her speak. Below the sketch was a single line of Naomi's handwriting. "I remember when you taught me to plant tomatoes. I never forgot." There was a second sheet, folded in half. A letter. "Gran, you didn't ask me for anything, not once. And that's exactly why I wanted to give you something. I remember the smell of the gloves you let me wear, too big for my hands, but I felt important in them. I remember how you showed me to make a hole deep enough, not too wide, and to talk to the roots before I buried them. I thought you were joking, but you weren't. You said roots remember kindness. I think people do too. Thank you for teaching me how to grow something worth keeping. I love you. Naomi Lynette stared at the words, her hand still resting over the letter like it might vanish. Then, without warning, without build-up, she began to cry. Not grief, not regret, something else. She turned her face to the window and let the tears fall silently, a warmth she hadn't allowed in years sliding down her cheeks like sunlight finding a crack in the blinds. Joyce entered quietly, pausing just inside the kitchen. She took one look at Lynette's face and didn't say a word, just stepped close, pressed a tissue into her hand, and left again. Not everyone needed explanation. Some people just knew when it was joy. That evening, Lynette made a second cup of tea and sat beside Naomi in the living room. No sketchbooks tonight, just quiet company. Naomi tucked her feet under her on the couch. You okay? Lynette nodded, eyes still a little pink. That drawing. Naomi smiled softly. I wanted you to see what it looks like from the outside. You built something. Lynette didn't respond right away. Then, you're not like her. Naomi swallowed. I worry I am. Sometimes. You're not. Naomi looked down at her lap. I told her I wasn't choosing sides. But maybe I was. Maybe I finally just chose you. Lynette reached across the couch and squeezed her hand. Choosing isn't betrayal, it's discernment. A beat of quiet passed between them. Then Naomi pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and held it up. A cabin, 2 hours outside Boise. Wood-burning stove, no cell reception. A hiking trail that ended at a lake. I thought we could go, Naomi said. Just for a weekend. Just us. Lynette smiled. Not a grand smile, but the kind that starts in the bones and radiates outward. That's a very good idea, Naomi grinned. We'll pack snacks and sketchbooks, and you're not allowed to cook. I'll allow it, Lynette said, mock serious. But only if you bring chocolate. 2 bars, Naomi promised. Neither of them mentioned Clara. Not that night, not the next. No explanations, no apologies, no updates. Some things didn't need to be processed anymore. Some things were just over. On Sunday morning, Lynette sat in the garden again while Naomi clipped mint for tea. The breeze was cooler now. October coming, she pulled the blue envelope from her pocket and placed it in her journal. Not hidden, not sealed. She let it rest open in the sun. A gift, received, and left exactly where it belonged. The senior center didn't smell like bleach or overcooked peas the way Lynette expected. It smelled like pencils, faint coffee, printer ink. Something lived in and used, not abandoned. She stood at the front of the activity room holding a stack of lined notebooks and a bundle of erasable pens in a ceramic mug shaped like a hedgehog. I don't expect Pulitzer material, she said to the half circle of folding chairs. Just honesty, that's the only requirement. 8 attendees, 3 in wheelchairs, 1 with a stutter that didn't stop her from reading aloud. They called the class Reclaiming Voice, Journaling Through Recovery. Eli's idea, after hearing Lynette vent about hospital bureaucracy 1 too many times. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she sat with them and talked about structure, tension, memory, and muscle. You don't need to sound brave, she told them. You just need to sound like yourself. She brought sample entries from her own old notebooks, not the bitter ones, not the ones Clara could twist out of context. The true ones, the clear ones. One woman wept after reading aloud a page she hadn't touched in 20 years. Another man finally wrote down the name of the wife who left him, just to get it out. Lynette didn't judge any of them. She just made more copies of prompts. She bought more pens. And she walked the distance from the parking lot to the community room each time, slowly but without help. Her cane clicked softly across the linoleum, steady and unhurried. She was still recovering, but now it was from nothing anyone else did to her. Now she was recovering into something. Back home, the garden exploded in color. Tomatoes clung to their vines like gossip. The lavender was going bold again. Even the marigolds, hacked back in August, had flared into orange defiance. Naomi arrived on Saturday morning with a paper bag of honey crullers and almond croissants. "I walked past the sketch of you with the cane," she said, setting the pastries on the porch table. "It's wrong now. You barely use it." "I still need it when I'm tired," Lynette said, easing herself into the green Adirondack chair. "But it's nice not to lean on it first anymore." They sat watching a blue jay strut across the railing like he owned the place. "Maybe I'll sketch him next," Naomi said, brushing crumbs off her jeans. Lynette sipped her tea and nodded. "He looks opinionated." Joyce popped her head out just long enough to remind them she was on laundry duty and not to eat all the almond ones. Naomi pulled her knees to her chest. "Do you think she'll ever stop?" Lynette didn't ask who. She didn't need to. The question was answered a few hours later, when Eli forwarded a final message from Clara. No subject line, just a single paragraph. "You'll regret all this when you're alone in that house with your tomatoes and your silence. You won't always have them, not Naomi, not Joyce. And when they're gone, it'll be just you. You think that's strength. It's not. It's delusion. I hope one day you realize it before it's too late." Lynette stared at the email for less than 10 seconds before deleting it. No screenshot this time, no folder, no file. Some things didn't need preserving, some endings didn't need explanation. That evening, Naomi helped her carry the garden baskets inside, brimming with beefsteaks and sungolds, even a few crooked peppers. Joyce had set the table already: iced tea, white beans with rosemary, a loaf of crusty bread. They didn't toast. They didn't need to. Lynette sat, hands weathered and speckled with soil, and smiled. Not the soft, uncertain smile of someone hoping to be understood, but the quiet confidence of someone who had stopped apologizing for surviving. Later that night, she wrote one final entry in her journal, the page before the back flap, right across from Naomi's first letter. "My daughter refused to visit me in recovery, so I recovered my future without her." And then she closed the book, not bitter, not empty, just full enough.